Most parents are wary of the so-called heavy metal music.
Salut à tous, METALXS, c'est l'essentiel de l'actualité métal et dérivé en quelques minutes, le tout en images, en musique et en interview. METALXS est une exclusivité Refix by Crédit Mutuel, la plateforme de toutes les musiques, tous les talents en partenariat avec Artforce. C'est parti! Nothing More fait partie de ces formations nées au début du XXIe siècle qui se sont efforcées d'apporter une nouvelle lecture du métal en le poussant plus loin. Le groupe texan a toujours joué une musique à la croisée des chemins entre hard rock et métal alternatif, dosant la mélodie et la puissance, une puissance délivrée justement dans des performances live toujours spectaculaires. METALXS a capté son chanteur Jonny Hawkins alors que le groupe finissait sa tournée américaine en compagnie de In This Moment et Sleep Token. L'occasion de parler de ce nouvel album Spirits, plus sombre, plus agressif, initié lorsque la crise sanitaire a éclaté. Et une première question, la pandémie a-t-elle offert en quelque sorte une pause et plus de temps pour ce 6e album studio alors que le groupe est habituellement tout le temps sur la route?
When we started working on the album Spirits, it was right when the pandemic hit. We just finished a tour with Ghost, and the timing actually worked out for us. I know there's never really a good time for a pandemic, but fortunately we were just at the end of our touring cycle on the stories we tell ourselves, so it did give us quite a bit more time to work on the album. It gave us some space to experience some normalcy for a while, have some family life, and really kind of explore our sound and our instruments.
Durant leur carrière, les musiciens de Nothing More ont pris l'habitude de travailler à distance. Mais cette fois, c'était un peu différent car ils n'ont pas pu se retrouver non plus en studio pour décider des arrangements.
On this album, it was a little different from the last few because we were in different states. So I was in Louisiana, Mark and Dan were in Texas, and Ben, our drummer, was in Arizona. So we did a lot of file sharing, a lot of back and forth on Google Chat. It was kind of a frustrating process because of that, because we just weren't physically in the same room for much of this album. But at the same time, it really did force us to up our individual skills, to really level up, because we were by ourselves for so long that we just had to really get good at our craft in each of our respective areas. So I'm thankful that we got to make the album like this, but I would never do it again. It's just too frustrating being that separated from one another and not getting that human body language, those immediate emotive responses on people's faces and in their body that kind of sparked that creative back and forth.
Quel esprit évoque-t-il dans le titre de l'album? Celui de l'être humain dans sa complexité ou celui qui semble parfois nous protéger?
It's spirits, plural, in the sense that in us all at any given time we have multiple voices battling for our attention and our psyche. We have multiple impulses. We have driving forces that are pushing and pulling us for different reasons. And I think that this album was kind of exploring each one of them and kind of the underpinnings of our psyche and kind of the underpinnings of our emotions. You know, there's millions and millions of years of evolution and trauma as a species to get us where we're at now. And I think the deeper and darker we dive into the shadows of our psyche, the more light we actually end up finding because we understand ourselves better. And I think we just went through a time in our history as humans where people seem to be very disconnected from their roots and from their biological underpinnings. I mean, you just look at things people say in the public sphere and even in the mainstream, and it's very apparent that people don't really understand who they are as an animal and as a creature. I think often we view ourselves as something different than animals, but I think we are animals that are filled, ironically, with all these different spirits pushing us in different directions. So that's kind of what this album explores.
Nothing More aborde généralement des situations et des expériences que ces musiciens ont traversées. Est-ce toujours le cas alors que Spirits sonne un peu plus sombre que ses précédents albums?
This album did turn out to be a little bit darker and maybe a little more progressive than the last few albums. And pretty much all of our music is from a place of experience, whether it was a life experience or something that all of us in the band can relate to and have been through something similar. So we do really write from a real place. And I think that some of the things that I went through and the band went through in the last few years were pretty challenging situations. And I think it just made for a little bit of a darker album, especially with the pandemic going on and being as isolated as we were. It just naturally kind of went that direction. I also think that because we were home for so long and I was literally working out in my garage, when I go exercise instead of, at a gym or out somewhere else, I was playing a lot of metal, just to get me through my workouts. And I think just that influence of kind of that more aggressive edge was just influencing me a lot as we were working on this one.
À propos du single You Don't Know What Love Means, Jonny ne trouve-t-il pas qu'aujourd'hui, il est plus facile d'aimer que de haïr?
And I don't know if I agree with that. I think hate is very easy. I think love is actually harder. I think hate is often kind of the low-hanging fruit. It's the quick emotion, and it's the easy emotion. There's not a lot of nuance to it. And hate has its own power. I mean, I don't think any negative thing is 100% negative in every situation. I think there's a place for hate, but very rarely. But that's kind of more the holistic view of different human emotions and things. But I think love is much more nuanced. It's more challenging. It requires more sacrifice. It requires a self-sacrifice to continue it. Hate requires no self-sacrifice. It's actually the opposite. It's the sacrifice of the other, us versus them. So I would push back a little bit on the ease of love. I think it's easier to hate.
Est-il de ceux qui pensent qu'il relève de la musique de véhiculer un message?
It's definitely a formidable foe against negative cycles and negative impulses. Music does seem to be a redeeming force. But I don't think music in and of itself, like anything, is purely one thing. I don't think it's purely positive or purely negative. It really is just a power, like anything, just like a weapon. I mean, it can be a force for good or for evil, depending on who's using the weapon and for what. And I think with music, it's kind of the same thing. I think the spirit of music is not so much a singular thing as it is like a gateway. I think music opens up a gateway to all kinds of different energies, power. So yeah, we've always tried to use music to meet people in maybe a dark place and lead them out or show them that there is a way. So that's kind of how we've used it with our own personal experiences.
À côté de l'album, on a parlé de Spirit Test, que Jonny a lui-même développé, lié aux comics du même nom. En quoi consiste-t-il?
If you go to spiritstest.com, that is where our meta personality test that I've been developing the last 2 to 3 years in the background. I've been working on that for quite some time now. Finally released it, and at first it wasn't apparent to me that this was going to be tied in with our music at all. It was kind of a pet project. I've always been interested in the human psyche and how people interact with others and themselves. And one little insight I'll share to it is that there is basically a chart that plots you in one of 4 quadrants on this chart when you take the test. And the 4 quadrants are ether, matter, time, and light. And each of those areas have very different characteristics. But over time, you'll start seeing patterns and people that you know who fall in one of these 4 quadrants, that they all kind of have these shared characteristics, maybe shared outlooks on life, shared response mechanisms to how they deal with stressful situations, or even how they navigate life, whether it's head dominant or heart dominant, or they listen to their gut in situations versus their more clairvoyant intuition, which I like to separate those two things. Most people kind of call the gut and intuition the same thing. I personally like to separate them a little bit. A gut is more of a feeling, and an intuition to me is more of a knowing. And they do cross over at times, but that's kind of how I charted out the fundamentals of this test. And once you're in one of these 4 quadrants, you're one of 2 types. And all that really means is that you're like the active or the passive version of that quadrant. Other words are like extroversion and introversion, or aggressive versus maybe passive, or cool-headed versus hot-headed, things like that.
S'il ne devait choisir qu'un seul album à jouer dans son intégralité sur scène, lequel lui viendrait immédiatement à l'esprit?
I think for us, I'd probably say Spirits, only because it's new and I really invested a lot of heart and soul in this one. Also because I've been playing the last few albums for such a long time. So I guess I would go with Spirits, but if I had to pick another artist, like one album to perform for the rest of my life, it would probably be Anima by Tool. That would be my album.
Now.
Lorsqu'il est en tournée ou enfermé dans un studio pendant de longues semaines, quelles sont les choses qui lui manquent désormais le plus?
The more we're on the road or in the studio, I would say the things I miss the most are the simple things, and of course loved ones, Kristen and Skylar back home, or my friends, or my cat, Blueberry, little bastard. The simple things is what I miss as well, just like your own bed, your own refrigerator, your bathroom, just kind of those personal space. That's the big one.
Nothing More a toujours été un groupe spectaculaire sur scène. On espère donc des nouvelles concernant l'annonce d'une tournée pour présenter Spirits.
Yeah, we are stoked to come back to Europe, especially France. We've had so many good shows there. We look forward to seeing all of y'all. We are working right now very hard on getting a follow-up tour. It's just been challenging since the pandemic to get all the logistical side of things and the promoters and everyone on board. So we are working very hard to make it happen so we can see you all again. We look forward to it.
Parmi les albums attendus dans les prochains jours, notez sur vos tablettes. Un nouvel album de METALXS, c'est toujours un événement. Et ce 25e, intitulé Lightwork, produit par Chris Robertson, vous réserve une version lumineuse de son œuvre. Nous ne sommes pas du black metal, nous sommes du New York black metal, déclare le quartet Black Anvil à la sortie de Regenesis, une nouvelle piste dark à explorer. Black comme le titre de l'album Black Box, mais on est cette fois sur du rock alternatif en direct de Toronto avec le nouveau Broken Love. Du post-hardcore californien, c'est Dayseeker et son 5e album Dark Sun, une œuvre très introspective comme l'a souligné son chanteur Roger Rodriguez. Le groupe allemand Dissolution, qui avait vécu un hiatus discographique de 13 ans au milieu des années 2000, revient avec I Am et une évolution dans son death metal progressif et mélodique. Il n'est jamais trop tard pour s'exprimer en solo. Frank Bello, le bassiste d'Anthrax, sort Then I'm Gone, un EP composé de 3 morceaux et de 3 extraits lus de son autobiographie. Le trio de death metal de Manchester, Ingested, délivre son 6e album, Ashes Lie Still. Un saut à Boston pour saluer la sortie de Seeing the Elephant, le nouveau disque du groupe de heavy metal power et progressif The Offering. Premiers enregistrements acoustiques, des reprises et d'autres chansons réimaginées et réenregistrées, voilà le programme de Other Worlds par The Pretty Reckless, le groupe mené par Taylor Momsen. Un EP pour les vétérans de la scène canadienne Voivode, Ultraman. C'est un hommage très original au thème de la série télévisée ainsi que des morceaux live bonus inédits. Autre EP pour le groupe de deathcore français As They Burn, de retour après 7 ans d'absence avec Ego Death. Finer Than Sin, c'est le 17e album des vétérans Enough Is Enough, qui fêteront leur 40e anniversaire dans 2 ans avec le bassiste-chanteur Chip Is Enough à la manœuvre. EP comme les 2 premières lettres d'Epica sur The Alchemy Project. 7 titres coécrits avec des musiciens de Flesh God Apocalypse, Camelot, Shining, Sidework, God Dethroned, Powerwolf entre autres, et avec la présence de Charlotte Vessels et Mercure. 3 ans après White Bat, le groupe de Caroline du Nord, He Is Legend, revient avec son métal moderne sur Endless Hallway, son 7e album. Un petit tour au nord chez Kemfar, Till Cloverstacked est le 9e disque d'un des groupes références du black metal norvégien. Last in Line, le groupe formé il y a 10 ans par Vivian Campbell, Vinny Appice et le regretté Jimmy Bain, membre de la formation originelle de Dio, sort un EP 4 titres, A Day in the Life, 2 en studio, dont la reprise des Beatles, et de live. Alors que Wolfgang Van Halen est en tournée sur les terres européennes, son premier album, Mammoth WVH, ressort en édition deluxe avec un titre bonus et 2 inédits. Un live cet été, Powerwolf bat le fer en permanence et propose Missa Cantorem 2, soit une version originale de l'album studio Call of the Wild paru en 2021, réinterprété intégralement par d'autres chanteurs. Power Metal aussi avec Walkings, la formation austro-germano-suisse et son 4e album Morgana. Le groupe culte de thrash anglais Eccentrics a bénéficié de la production de Andy Snip pour son 7e album Seven Words. Le multi-instrumentiste Zig-Sky, révélé depuis 4 ans pour ses vidéos de virtuose sur internet, propose son premier disque, Intergalactic Demon King, une lecture très personnelle et éclectique du métal. Et pour finir, cassez la tirelire, le coffret super deluxe de Guns N' Roses, Use Your Illusion 1 and 2, est enfin là. Après un an d'attente pour une tournée reportée, le groupe de hard rock sudiste Blackstone Cherry a enfin honoré ses dates européennes, dont 2 en France, à Paris et Bordeaux. METALXS a rencontré son chanteur-guitariste Chris Robertson et évoqué avec lui la plus récente production du groupe, un live enregistré et tourné dans la mythique salle du Royal Albert Hall de Londres, mais aussi le bilan de ces 20 dernières années, le rôle du bassiste Steve Jewell après le départ de Jon Lawhon et l'avenir de Blackstone Cherry avec en ligne de mire un 8e album studio. Mais tout d'abord, quel sentiment ressent-on à revenir en Europe après une si longue absence?
It's been entirely too long, put it that way. You know, the last time we got to do a headlining tour was in, I think, 2018, and then we were over in 19 with Alice Cooper and did some shows. And then, you know, the world kind of went crazy for a while. And to finally be back and to see people coming out to the shows, you know, tonight's the last night of the tour, and it's just been incredible, you know, to be able to come back all these years later and still have a fan base and still have people showing up every night and singing the song. it's hard. It's really hard to describe when you go from doing something for so long and then it's completely taken away from you by no doing of your own. You know, it's just the way things went. And then you get back to it. It's I just feel alive again, man. You know, you feel like you again.
En juin est sorti l'album live au Royal Albert Hall. Jouer dans cette salle mythique est une forme d'accomplissement de carrière en soi, non?
I mean, you look at the Royal Albert Hall and like we're huge into classic rock, you know, and the early beginnings of classic rock with Zeppelin and Hendrix and the Beatles and all these bands, you know, and when you look at a place like that that's so prestigious for us, you know, to be from a town of 1,500 people, to get to go play on that stage was always something that we had aspired to do, you know, and to see that come to fruition after so many years of trying was just, you know, it would be like working your whole life to kind of get this one thing, and then you're there in that moment. You know, it's really surreal to do that. But it was something that we definitely wanted to document, and people seemed to really like the live record and album. I remember walking in that day, and it was just kind of breathtaking to stand on that stage where so many of our heroes have stood. You know, I think I was more excited than anything. You know, my dad passed away last year at the end of June. And he and I had talked about that show specifically for a long time, you know, so he was there with me in spirit. I firmly believe that, you know, so it, you know, it was more excitement and pride, you know, went into that show, I think, than fear for me.
Chris a d'ailleurs chanté Things My Father Said, comprenez les choses que mon père m'a dites ce soir-là avec une intensité rare.
I haven't played that song since that night. I did it on that tour, was the last time I did it, and I brought one of his guitars over, you know, and played it on it. But it was special for sure, you know, and to have that many people singing along and holding up their lights, you know, I definitely, you know, he was with me. It was absolutely beautiful, man. It's a moment that I'll cherish forever.
Le groupe recueille un succès incroyable au Royaume-Uni. Comment explique-t-il cette relation privilégiée?
If we knew the reason why we were so successful in the UK, we would be that way everywhere. You know, it's, I think at the end of the day, we just connected there for some reason, you know. I mean, we do bigger shows in the UK than we do at home, so it's kind of it's weird. We're like the most American sounding band, you know, but our biggest success comes outside of the United States. So, you know, we're just thankful that we can go somewhere and be appreciated, you know. Anywhere that we can play and people show up, we're super happy to be there.
Avec le recul, à quoi attribue-t-il la notoriété de son groupe?
Man, we put a lot of time in, man. I remember, you know, when we first started out, we would practice 6 days a week, a lot of days, 8 to 12 hours a day. You know, we would just be in the practice house working on songs or learning songs, or, you know, just playing stuff together to try to play tighter as a band, you know. It was really ground up, you know. We've kind of done it all off of playing live concerts. We've never been a huge radio band or anything like that, you know. But we've done it, you know, on the ground, as they say back home. So we're just very fortunate that we're able to continue to do this, you know.
Arrive-t-il à imaginer ce que sa vie aurait été sans la musique?
Man, for me, I mean, my whole life has been centered around music since I was very little. It's really the only thing that I feel like I'm any good at. So everything I do, you know, is revolved around music. When we're home, I like to work with other bands and, you know, go in the studio with them and help them kind of, you know, record their records and write songs with friends and stuff, you know. But every day I'm playing guitar at home. It's just every day, you know. The beautiful thing about guitar is however much you know, there's a lot you don't know, you know. So you can learn as much as you want, but there's still an entire world of guitar to be learned past that, you know. I watch guys play all the time and I'm just like, I can't wrap my head around what they're doing, but you know, when you figure out a piece of that and you get to kind of get it, it releases that same kind of dopamine in your body that, fuck yeah, man, you know what I mean? For me, it's complete therapy. Music is not only, you know, the way I make my living, but it's also my biggest outlet for all emotion, you know?
En 2021, Chris a fait un petit pas de côté et collaboré avec le duo The Picture Box.
I love any opportunity I get to just try something new, you know, and the Picture Books are a band that I dig, man, and I was reached out to when they were doing the record, and they sent me this track, and it took me forever to get a chance to go do anything, and then finally I booked the studio. I had no lyrics written, no melodies, no nothing, and I just booked the studio and went down one day, and my wife actually said, I looked at her and I was like, I have no idea what to write this song about. And she said, write it about a runaway man. And I was like, I really like that idea. Somebody, you know, running from something. And Catch Me If You Can came out of that, you know, and it literally went down to the studio and just kind of did it, you know, and it felt really natural once I got in there to do that. But I was absolutely thrilled to be a part of their record, you know, and it's always fun for me to do something because Black Stone Cherry is my life. That is everything, you know, minus my family, my life is Black Stone Cherry, and that's what I've always known, what I've always done, what I hope to always do, you know. But I also love being able to branch out and do, you know, a song with the Picture Books or whatever comes along, you know. If it makes sense, then I love to do it.
À travers les concerts de Black Stone Cherry, Chris pense-t-il apporter quelque chose à la vie des gens?
Man, all I can hope is that everybody that comes in that door gets to escape the reality of the fucked up world we've lived in for the last 3 years. You know, it's been incredibly challenging for the entire world. You know, and we start to get past COVID, and now we have, you know, worries of war and all these things, you know, especially being this close, you know. So I just hope when people come to a Black Stone Cherry show, whether it's tonight, whether it's 10 years from now, that when they walk in the door, from the minute the lights go down until the lights come back on, they're able to escape all the things that ail them in regular life, whether that be anything, you know. Just let that shit go and come in and have a good time with us, and that's what it's about for us, you know. That hour and 20 minutes, hour and a half that we play, not only is it an escape for us, but our goal is to make it to where everyone in the room feels like they've escaped everything else for a little while too, you know.
Black Stone Cherry a-t-il commencé à travailler sur un nouvel album?
We've recorded about half the record so far, and then we're going back in to finish up hopefully beginning of next year sometime. So I would say sometime next year we'll have new music, full album.
Steve Jewell, le nouveau bassiste, a-t-il collaboré dessus?
Yeah, he's been a part of the whole process, man. Steve has been absolutely amazing. We've known Steve for a long, long time. You know, he's from the same area we are, and we couldn't have found anybody better to come into the band and take that spot. There were a lot of people that reached out, you know, whenever they found out that Jon had decided to step away, and you know, I'm sure there's a lot of amazing musicians, but for us, it's more than that. You know, it's more than just can you play the parts. You know, you got to be able to hang out with us. You got to be able to be a part of the team. You know, and that's what we found in Steve, and we're super grateful for that.
Comment entrevoit-il l'avenir de Black Stone Cherry?
Man, if I have anything to say about it, it'll be 7 more albums. You know, just like the first 20 years provided, and playing more shows, man, more shows in France. You know, I just want to continue what we're doing, you know, and continue to grow that, and continue to put out, you know, great music and great concerts for people.
Voilà, METALXS, c'est terminé pour aujourd'hui. On se retrouve dans 15 jours pour un nouveau numéro avec toujours plus d'interviews, de surprises et de contenus inédits. Un immense merci pour votre fidélité et n'oubliez pas de prolonger l'expérience métal sur riffx.fr. Salut!